So yeah, I've not done a PhD, so I don't really know. So what kind of job you will aspire here? I mean, the job I aspire to. So just yeah, what's your dream job? Let's say. You can just say anything. Nobody's judging you, so you can say whatever. That's the problem. Next time.
It is not for hearing.
Okay, got it. Okay, I should say.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the another session of the Network Seminar Series hosted by the Center for Network Intelligence at the ECE and RBCCPS IISc. Today's talk is by Ashish. Ashish is a 20-year industry experience holder, graduated from IIT Madras in 2005, did his own startups, struggled to get into corporate world when his startups failed and had to systematically prepare for getting into FANG companies. He had worked in Amazon and Facebook as software manager and engineer respectively. He is currently chilling in life after doing a solo transcontinental motorcycle trip from London to India in 5 months, covering 22,000 kilometers. Ashish currently works as a technology consultant or scientist at the CNI and EC department. In his spare time, he gets paid for conducting mock interviews at websites like igotanofer.com. So before we move on to the talk, I would like to request the audience, online audience, to mute your microphone, and you can unmute yourself only when asking questions, or you can relay your questions in the chat box so that we can ask Ashish directly. So yeah, over to you, Ashish.
Thank you. Am I audible from here? Okay, cool. By the way, just curious, Srinivas, how many people are there online? 6. Okay, okay, okay. Sounds good. Hi guys. So yeah, that's an introduction that was written by me, and Srinivas has looked into that introduction and he said that, do you really want this introduction to go out there? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I personally believe that humor makes things better. I know that this is a very academic setup where you're supposed to kind of be very upright. But well, I don't subscribe to that philosophy. But well, that's another reason why I'm here probably. So yeah, thanks for coming in for this talk. A bit background about this talk is Srinivas and I are actually working in CNI together, and Srinivas was telling me that you know, they have these talks running and he doesn't have anybody to speak this week, and I volunteered, and that's how I am speaking to you guys here. But having said that, I do have a genuine interest in the topic that I'm speaking. I was first concerned that this topic would qualify as a talk because I was not very, I have done some research work. I can talk about things, not really research, but more of industry thing. But then I was not very sure if that would appeal to you as an audience, because people who are in the industry would probably correlate to that, those kind of challenges. I have never sat through in the recent times, I have never sat through a academic talk, but most of the times when I go to an academic talk, I'm kind of scratching my head trying to understand what exactly is happening. So yeah, to again optimize it for the audience, I wanted to come up with a topic which people will feel connected to. It will also help them, and I would also enjoy talking about it. And this seems like one of the topic that came out of it. And yeah, here I am presenting. At any point of time, if you guys want to ask any questions, feel free. In industry, they always say that it should be interactive. Well, in academia also, they say it should be interactive, but well, that doesn't really happen. At least it didn't happen back when I was in academia in 2005. But well, that's not the problem in industry. And in industry, the talks usually end up being pointed by the audience saying that, oh, this is something's wrong out there. So being as a presenter, you're always on a back foot that you'll come across somebody who's just going to hijack this whole conversation. But I know it won't going to happen because, well, I'm in industry. So you're probably going to listen and I'm going to talk. But feel free to interrupt, feel free to ask questions at any point of time. And yeah, I'll not get offended or anything. At some point when I used to be in academia, I didn't used to ask questions because I always used to feel that maybe the professor might get offended or something if I ask something, if this is something I can. But well, nothing of that sort. At the end of this talk, it would be successful if you guys go back taking something from this rather than, you know, just utilizing your 1 hour. So yeah, I would try to make this useful, but if you have any pointers or any questions that makes it more useful for you, feel free to ask. So let me get started. How many of you guys understand this reference? Okay. Uh, yeah. So yeah, this probably might be a too old thing for you. Like when we were in college, like Terminator was like the really old thing for us, but it was really fascinating. And when we were in, I was in school when this movie came out, and I don't think I understood it very well till I got into the college and saw it a few times, and then I understood. But anyway, uh, this particular like there will be a lot of reference to this movie going ahead, and that's my personal favorite. uh, well, Neo was a software engineer, but well, I don't think we have become that good, or maybe he was just glorified. But anyway, so the topic of this discussion is how do you crack software engineering interviews. A lot of the references in this talk will be for FANG companies, because I aspired to be in FANG companies. I'll probably not go into the background because it would be a repetition for a few, but it took me a lot of steps to get into a FANG company. And being a non-CS grad and not really being prepared for these companies when I graduated. So I have a lot of learnings from that journey, which I'm going to document. But then specifically for what is necessary for fresh grads, is what I'm going to talk. Some of you might have some industry experience, and maybe for you, there is going to be some differences in the interviews for these companies. There is one last slide that I have kept for you people, if you have some experience. There is another area which is being interviewed on, but the rest of it is probably the straightforward thing. So if you want to be the one, if you want to be the Neo, if you want to crack these FANG companies, well, there are 3 steps to being the one, which is basically getting an interview call. Uh, the fresher the grad you are from the college, the harder is to get the interview call, because consider it more like a pyramid out there, and the fresh grads are the most out there. Uh, this became evident to me when I was in my final year in college in IIT Madras, and I was like, I'm an IIT grad, getting a job should be easy, and then the placement season started. And when I went and spoke to the companies, like I got asked for the interview, and when I was there interviewing, I realized that the companies are very like high in terms of scrutiny. I remember in our batch, like getting, like we thought that, oh, we will sail this through, but then it wasn't evident, and that was a real dent in my confidence, to the extent that I was not looking to apply to the US universities. And one day I remember going to my professor and telling him, sir, I want to apply for the US university. And he was like, okay, what exactly changed? And I was like, getting job is not that easy as I thought it to be. And then he was like, if that's the reason, then well, I'm not giving you a recommendation. So well, I didn't, eventually I didn't ask for a recommendation, but uh, this this whole thing dawning upon me that that getting like an interview, get successfully clearing interview was such a hard thing, because uh, if you think from the perspective of the people who are actually coming to interview you, they are actually going to a lot of different colleges. They have like quotas in each colleges, and they have some like good reputation with some of the colleges. They don't have any reputation with some of the colleges. When I say reputation, it's like some like a give and take, like, hey, I have to go and hire from this college, otherwise this college will be angry with me, right? So a lot of things goes in the background, but then they also have to go to a lot of different colleges to kind of say that, oh, we actually went to so many colleges, but they might have just hired from the first 2 colleges they visited. Now they are just visiting other colleges just for the sake of it, well, because they have to, complete their quota. So these interviews that you will eventually get in in the campus, if you are not clearing it, or if you are not getting shortlisted, don't get disheartened. A lot of things goes behind the scene from the people who are actually interviewing you. Secondly, you are positioned against the best of the people in your uh, kind of setup, right? So So eventually, yeah, getting that visibility as a fresh grad is extremely hard in the placements that happen in the campus. But well, I will probably go ahead and talk about more about how do you successfully get an interview call and what are the potential hacks to get more interviews. But that's the biggest problem that you will face as a fresh grads. The next bigger problem would be cracking the coding interviews. The coding interviews have become extremely tough. Like if you have not prepared for them, it's extremely hard that you can clear that in like whatever 35 or 45 minutes of interview that you have been asked to do. And I have a friend visiting me today. He is a computer science grad from IIT Guwahati. Like we were entrepreneurs together. Uh, and when I first did some coding interviews and I failed miserably, and I came to him and I said that this was a problem. I had no clue how could I have understood this algorithm. And he actually told me that, dude, like there are set ways of this is the problem and this is the solution, and you only get it with practice. And I was like, so you didn't study any of this in your computer science thing? And he was like, yes, we did, but well, unless you're not practicing, it'll just not come to you. So these questions have, there was a time it used to be like extremely hard, people asking dynamic programming and stuff. I don't know if they do in fresh grad still. I know Microsoft was specifically very brutal in that sense. At some point of time, Google actually banned asking these dynamic programming problems. But I remember interviewing for Microsoft and being asked dynamic programming, and I must have really sweated in that 35-minute interview. I distinctively have that memory about that. And I just couldn't do anything about it. And then I just came out and I was like, well, unless you know this problem beforehand, there is no way you could find that solution in 35 minutes. But well, I think people nowadays are much more aware of these kind of challenges. So I will talk about the rest of the talk about how you can effectively crack the coding interviews. If some of it is already known, you can always tell me because, well, I'm not really aware how the fresh grad audience understanding is at the moment. But yeah, I'm sure there are some things that are good takeaways. The third point is preparing for behavioral interview. This is what a lot of people take it very easy. They're like, oh, we cracked it. What is it in behavioral? Like, I'm a great guy. I will definitely nail it. And there are gotchas there also. Especially when you are an experienced candidate interviewing out there, behavioral interview is something that you would dread the most. But there is a separate way of preparing for these behavioral interviews if you're doing it for being a fresh grad. And I'll tell you what the interviewers and the company is going to look out for. For experienced folks, yeah, there's something called system design interview also happens. I don't know if that will happen for you or not, but I'll also cover a little about that as well. So yeah, this is the order in which you have to kind of crack it. The first being the most difficult and being has the most competition, and then things become easier and easier, and then you get the job and you become the one. But yeah, let's get into those steps one by one. Okay. I think I already lost like 20 minutes. Okay. I'll try to finish this early. Okay. So don't get bored or anything. And if I'm going too fast, just hold me back. The disclaimer and background, I think I gave it to the audience here before the start of this talk, but I'll tell that again for the online audience. I'm not a PhD grad. I'm not a fresh grad. I graduated 20 years back. And I don't have any research background. So maybe I have a lot of dissimilarities from the audience here. But then a lot of things that I'm going to tell here is from my own experience and I being an interviewer looking into the candidates. So that's a disclaimer. So take everything with a pinch of salt. What I'm telling is not the source of truth, but just a guideline that probably worked for me, might not work for everyone else. Okay, so now back to the business. So how do you get the interview call? Placement cell, it's very figured. You apply, you get shortlisted, you don't get shortlisted, you can't do much. You can, if you, well, you can't because I'm not sure how much CV they are looking at. They probably, I sat with Parimal and we did look at a few people applying at CNI and I could very clearly see what Parimal is looking at. Like, he should be looking at more things than this, but well, I never said that to him. But well, that's it. Like, GPA, that's pretty much rules the roost there. So, but then, sorry, yeah, good college, yeah, but well, they are all ISc, so yes, yes, no, in your case, but I'm in their case, yeah, you apply to placement, well, your GPA kind of dominates, and yeah, like you nowadays there is an increasing trend towards not looking at it and trying to kind of call as many people as possible for some automated test just to filter people out. So people with not great GPA, you still have a chance. But again, then you have to be pretty good at the other thing of cracking the coding interview, which I'll come to. But let's say placement cell didn't work out for various reasons. Too many people, companies came, they came to your college later than they visited some other college. Their quotas were over. Bad luck. Uh, can't do much in placement. So, okay, so what are our options out there? So, you, I totally recommend applying offline after off campus if the placement thing hasn't worked out. But before you do that, you should work on your CV. And I'll tell you a quick things. Again, looking from the people who will look at your CV, uh, people who look at the CV, they have 5 seconds to look at it and to take a call that are they going to interview this guy or are they not going to interview this guy. In that 5 seconds, you have to make a mark. Okay, so don't spend time making it a PhD thesis, a multiple page CV. Keep it one pager. If you keep it one pager, it also gives people this feeling that the guy is not too verbose. That's another problem you that a lot of people face, especially with fresh grads. They somehow there is this perception that has gone into people. The more you speak, the more effective or the more impressive you come across. While in industry, it's always the opposite. Don't go by me. I'm speaking a lot, but well, maybe I'm not that good also. But well, the lesser you speak and the more succinct you are in your answers, uh, the better you usually project yourself as a candidate. So try to work on being succinct. Make it a one-pager CV. Make it unique. Like when people are browsing through your CV, like a lot of CV, when your CV comes in, the uniqueness will get you from 5 to 10 seconds. 5 seconds you can make it 10 seconds by making it unique. Some of the things I have mentioned there, so make it one pager. Put your picture. Not many people put their picture, or if it has become standard, then don't put your picture if everybody is doing that. Don't write random stuff like career goals, like I want to, do X, Y, Z, or I want to kind of move the mountains here, or I can be an, you know, athletic superstar or whatever. Like nobody reads that. Like everybody starts that from career goal because, well, the template that you get in the internet has that thing in the top, and then you also write. Nobody does that. In future, when you get more experience, that area is reserved for writing your skills. And that again is very much inspired by the fact that a lot of recruiters actually filter the CV based on the skill. So those skills should come as keyword in your CV somewhere. And that top area is reserved for that actually, where you write your career goal or whatever, the fancy thing that you write. So don't do that. Uh, Highlight your college and GPA because that's the two takeaway thing people's gonna look at it. Highlight as in write them in bold somewhere. Like don't make the font too huge, but write it somewhere like it is visible. If you have a low grade for any reason, and it could be genuine and non-genuine, and in both cases, well, you still have a chance. Try to cover up with a story and write it next to that GPA. Like maybe you were involved in so back in our college, like people with low GPAs were doing a lot of other things. Maybe they were volunteers or coordinators of some of the other events and all. Maybe they were interested in that. Management consultancies would like that kind of skill. So if you have a low GPA, it's okay. You write about, hey, I was this, and just write in like 1 or 2 sentences. Don't write like an essay, but try to cover it up. If you have done any good work, uh, maybe you have a great side project that can be showcase worthy. You did some paper or whatever. Yeah, something. Just try to cover it up so that it gets people attention. When you write about your project that you worked on in your college or in your internship and on, put some data in it. Don't like one way of saying this is this was like you put some some jargon keywords around that saying XYZ learning this and that, but also put some data around like what it actually helped you do. It reduced the time by 175%, right? Oh, it reduced the time a lot, rather than write some data out there. Most people don't write data in their descriptions, and these kind of things create a better impression from the people who are looking. They will scan for this. So for you, the skills are not important, but a recruiter would scan for the skill, the college, the previous companies if you have more experience, and these kind of things where they will look at it. And because eventually they are going to pass it to the hiring manager, and hiring manager is going to look at these kind of things and he'll say, this looks impressive. So try to be succinct and try to be more data driven, and make it unique so that you get 5 to 10 seconds. Uh, okay, and now interview reach out. So placement didn't work out for you, tough competition, it's okay. Apply off campus. Reach out to friends in companies for referral. You must have your friends who got hired. People get paid to for referrals who eventually make it to the companies, right? So they also have interest in referring you. So reach out to the friends. Try approaching recruiter on LinkedIn. If whichever companies you're interested, you will be able to find the recruiters. Like write them a word. Most recruiters will have their in-mails open. You can reach out to them. Don't approach random people for referrals in LinkedIn. A lot of people in companies get these lot of friend requests from people in colleges. Don't do that. Like mostly those will not get accepted. Second is like, even if they accept you, there is no way they're going to put a word for you. So don't do that. Very important point. Be mindful of your relationships. It's very common for college people to get a job and then screw up their final year thesis or whatever. Well, because I got the job, I don't care, right? You go, you work in an internship, you are there. Uh, your mentor wanted you to work hard. You were like, okay, I'm going to do a few things, but then you kind of ended that stint on a bad note. Uh, be mindful of your relationship. These are the initial relationships that can eventually go a long way for you, because these are the people you come for referrals when you want to probably go to a good place. So if you have, let's say, good relationship with Parimal, and let's say I was in Facebook, and you would have gone and said, Parimal, hey, I want to work for Facebook, and then Parimal figures out and sends the CV to me, and I refer you internally, right? So have good relationships with your with these industries and your mentors and your professors, irrespective of you getting a job or not, because for the second job they can always help you. They can always put you some good referrals, and in general, uh, not a lot of background check happens for the students because it's just not possible. But then there is a chance that a company, if you apply off campus, come back seeking some feedback about you, formally or informally, and you don't want things to get bad at that point of time. So please work on your relationships. I understand it probably means stretching a bit, probably sacrificing shorter term benefits for the longer term, but it's worth it. Telling from the experience. Not that I did any bad, but yeah, I have seen a lot of cases. Okay, so let's say you did all this, you applied off campus, you got this interview call from the company that you're interested in. Now getting an interview call itself is 50% battle won, if you're getting it from the companies that you're interested in. Now the rest of the 50% battle is where you have to spend time on, which is basically the cracking the coding interview. I have written a longish blog post on this link, which is what I'm going to concisely tell in the next set of slides. But if you're interested, you can always go back and read this. Maybe I'll make this PPT available later. Okay. So, okay. Back in 2005, actually 2005, I never interviewed. Back in 2015, when I came back to the job market after doing some core job and doing entrepreneurship and failing, I did fairly badly at one of the coding interviews, and I was like, I'm not actually well prepared. And I asked few people, and then that's what they told me about, like some of these uh, popular books for algorithms, which the CS people study during their curriculum. And they said that, well, you should read this up. And I started reading, and I was like, I think I probably read 10 pages out of it, and I was like, this doesn't seem like the right use of my time. I mean, I probably will be reading distrust algorithm and, various different kind of fancy things. But what was actually needed was that when a problem get presented to you, how quickly you can actually solve it and you figure out which algorithm to be done. The more I practiced and the more I became better at it, I realized that it actually becomes a muscle memory. You look at the problem and it becomes a muscle memory, and like how you are going to actually do it. And you'll eventually be writing a breadth first search, which you wouldn't know actually you're writing breadth first search, because it becomes a muscle memory. This, when it has become your muscle memory, that's when you can start actually cracking the interviews. You might not need that kind of a thing at a fresher level. I don't know, because I didn't interview at your level, but then at my level, yes, like it has become a muscle memory. I never had to prepare for these coding interviews again, because, well, the more experience you become, the bar also goes down, because, well, you are now being judged on various other parameters as well. But then you have to get it to that level where it starts becoming a muscle memory. And what you need is not reading all those books about like the algorithms and all. What you need to do is to practice on lead code. Uh, Back when we were like, I was in 2015, lead code was there. And uh, I was not aware, so I started practicing. Initially, it was a fairly rough ride. I would look at a problem, I wouldn't understand, I would write some code, it would work, it wouldn't work. But again, it's like you prepare for it once, and when you cross the chasm, you never come back. So it's like a one-time time investment that you have to do. The earlier you start in your career, the better it is. Uh, Now, at your level, like how much time would you need to become really good at it? Uh, the I can give you some benchmarks, which will tell you if you have become good at it. If you can do a easy no, easy. Medium. If you can do a medium problem of lead code in less than 15 minutes of time yourself. And if you can achieve that, that means you have become good. That means you can clear most interviews out there. Uh, uh, there are certain ways you have to, especially if you're preparing for FANG. So different companies will expect you to write code in different ways. Some companies, they give you a proper IDE. They will make you run the code and everything. FANG companies never does that. They give you a code editor, you're supposed to write the code, and you're supposed to then test it with the input yourself, like looking at the code and like fix any errors in there. You're never supposed to run it. So these are kind of sub skills that you need to develop to be able to crack these coding rounds. And the 15-minute time is what you're potentially looking at. And if you can do that, well, you have become good. If you're not, just keep practicing. If you will Google, you will come across articles online or forums online where people benchmark themselves with the number of questions they have solved on lead code. So they will say, I am 400 questions solved on lead code. I am 300 questions solved on, and then they also sub benchmark it, 400 medium or 300 medium, 50 hard, and things of that sort. So you will come across all these benchmarks, but again, these benchmarks are different for different people. So you don't have to go by that benchmark. I think a 15-minute medium solving problem is a good benchmark. At least at my level, it gets me cleared. I guess it should also get you cleared at your level as well. So that's the benchmark you should look at. Now, how do you start if you're doing it the first time at lead code? You guys have been doing lead code, or is it totally new? Yes, no? Yes, you guys are doing. Okay. So if you're now, let's say if somebody comes on this talk and says, oh, I didn't know lead code, how do I get started? So for them, uh, the best thing to do is like some people say, oh, go by the topics like string or array or two-pointer or this or that. I would say that the best strategy is that you reverse order based on frequency. If you go to lead code, you can reverse it order. The most frequently asked question come on the top. Just start solving them. Skip all the hard ones for the first go. Like, don't spend time doing that. Focus on easy and medium. The regular cadence matters. If you are one of those disciplined kinds, it's a good news for you. You will be able to be there quickly. If you're not the disciplined kind like me, well, you have to find some ways of making you disciplined. At my level, to make myself disciplined, I schedule interviews. and then I get a deadline and then I work towards it. So I know that I have to really do it. You have to find your own way of making, yours a discipline, be it working with the people or like, I have a friend, he's an IISc grad, and he tells me about how he and his friends, they used to discuss these algorithms on dinner tables and all. Somebody will say, oh, this is the problem now, how will you do? And then they'll talk about the algorithm. Then they go back after the dinner and they write the code, and then they'll make it work on lead code. And that's how they kept each other, going on a regular cadence. So yeah, you have to find that secret sauce. There is something called Sunday contest that happens on lead code. Sign up for that. That's also could be one of the hacks for making you do these problems on a regular basis. So yeah, some of these things that maybe you can get to solving lead code on a regular cadence. So you are preparing for lead code for long. Now you've got your interview. It's on a certain date. What can you do special closer to that interview date? So buy lead code subscription. I think it's around $25 or $30, not too much as per Indian standards also, considering it can potentially get you a job. Whichever company you've got the interview from, if it is one of those FANG or the popular companies, there must be a tag of that company in lead code. Filter by that company and then do those problems. Again, filter by that company. This filter is only available in premium, so you will not get in without premium. And then reverse order by frequency, but only for that company, and then solve those top 10, 15, 20 problems. Go there. There's a good chance that, at least in Facebook, it used to happen way back in 2020, that you will get asked those top 10, one or two problems from those top 10 or 15 questions that are there in lead code. So lead code is a very well updated database of these questions that get asked. Well, the company you're interviewing for is not, the tag is not on lead code. What can you do? So you should Google for the company questions, for Google for that company questions, and also look on Glassdoor. You will come across some questions. The challenge is they will not be well defined. You have to now kind of understand and figure it out. But yeah, like that way you can try figuring it out what potential questions can be asked. There's a resource called Team Blind, and there's a lead code forum. Go there and read about interview experiences of the people. Again, you will find more on FANG over there because the audience is very global. Might not be for the company that you're doing, but well, yeah, you can always look it up. Okay, let's say you cleared coding interview, and well, most probably all these rounds are probably happening at the short succession. But then if you start feeling very uh, very positive about you being well prepared for coding interview, you should also prepare for behavioral. This is something which is fairly neglected. Anybody knows, like anybody has gone through any of the fresh grad interviewed and got any behavioral questions being asked? No? You got asked? What kind of behavioral question was that? Good question. Yes. So these are the kind of behavioral questions that you will get asked. And I'll tell you, like most of the times, you will not be prepared for them. You will end up giving an impromptu answer. 50% of the time it will work. Actually, most of the time it will work, but some of the time it can potentially fail. But I'll tell you from what the company is actually looking out for. So if I'm doing a behavioral interview of a fresh grad, I first want to know that he's a good team player. Basically, what does a team player means? That uh, people, especially from great colleges, tend to be snobbish and fairly overconfident because they feel that, oh yeah, we are from this premier college of India and we are probably really good. And which basically means they don't are open to feedback and they are not open to criticism. And they come across as very confident guy who knows it all. You don't have to give that aura out in the interview. If with any of your answers it comes across that, oh, you are that kind of a guy, then there's a good chance that you will not be a team player. You will not take feedback. You will always be questioning just because you are taking every feedback on your ego. And that's a very rampant problem with people from tier 1 colleges in India. I can tell you from experience. So yeah, are you a good team player? But you should also have enough confidence. A lot of times people come out of the college, they feel they don't really know. And then if somebody is saying something, because most of the time in academia, like your professor is telling you something and you're like, yeah, that's how it is. Yeah, I'm gonna do it, right? And then they'll say, oh, this is wrong and this, and then you'll say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I think, yeah, I should have done this better. Oh, but like have your own stance about what you think is right. What you don't have to be overconfident, but you don't have to be underconfident also, because in that case, while you're a good team player, and this is like a nit point compared to overconfident and underconfident, being an underconfident is still a better side to be in. But being an overconfident is probably not definitely not a great idea. And you are not sorry impulse. No, it's impulsive. You are not impulsive. So a lot of times a non-tech question is being asked to people, fresh grads, and they start answering very quickly, and then they also become very verbose at it, and then because you are actually probably don't have an idea of what you're answering, but then you're trying to cover it with verbosity of your answer, and that's also not a good sign. So again, as I said, being succinct is being good. You don't have to be impulsive. So when these kind of questions, like what he said, like if somebody is asking you to do a job again and again, how would you respond to it? Usually in these kind of questions, like take a moment. You can take like maximum 30-second break to kind of think about what the person is asking. Try to think about a situation, if it is not exactly the same, similar to what has happened, and then start your answer by telling, if most probably you will not get exact same situation, you start by telling, oh, I have this situation where this kind of thing happened, and I think it is similar to this. If you just start by with this answer, you will give this feeling to the interviewer that, oh, the guy actually listened to me, he actually thought about it, and he's giving an answer. Well, 50% job done, right? Now the answer doesn't matter. Well, you were receptive about it, you understood the question, and you didn't jump to the solution, and then 50% of the battle got won there itself. So now, if you have to summarize it in one line, what the person who is interviewing on behavioral is looking out for, which mostly will be the hiring manager of the team, he just wants to know that if he and his team is he or she and his or her team is going to enjoy working with you, and you will not be too much of a pain to manage, because well, can be great technically and everything, but then if you are not aligned to the team, like the work is just not getting, and well, there's no point having you on board. Now, how do you prepare for this behavioral? You don't have to spend a lot of time. A lot of these points come from like how an experienced person prepare for a behavioral interview, but some of it would still apply in your case. So there are certain standard behavioral questions that are being asked, like, yeah, how, what you'll do if same thing is being asked to you again and again. What would you do if you do not agree to what your professor or what your manager has asked you to do? There are certain 8 or 10 standard questions available out there. Read them up. You can Google them. It just say top 10 behavioral questions for fresh grads, and you will get some questions. You would know them. There is something called STAR stories. Now, STAR stands for situation. Anyway, so any answer that you give to any of these behavioral questions, it should first start with situation and context. So how would you handle when been asked to do a job again and again? You start by giving the situation and the context. I was in this company. I was doing on this project. This project required this particular piece, which was going wrong again and again. I was the one who was handling it. So I was getting these continuous for people to fix this situation and context explained. Then you go to what the action you took. And in action, you talk about, okay, so you did something. I tried understanding why they were asking this again and again. Try to be more empathetic, try to be more thorough about the answer. Again, you will do a better job with it if these star stories you would have prepared before. So I'll come to also that how do you prepare the star stories, but I'll first tell you. So situation, then the action that you took, and what is the result that came, and your answer should be like that. Don't start giving generic answers. Oh yeah, I usually ask people to actually go back and think about why they are asking me again and again. Bad answer. Okay, start with situation, action, result, and that's the structure you have to create to your answer. Now, how do you create these star stories, and how do you map them to the question being asked? there is a fair bit of elaborate science behind, not science, but technique behind it, but I'll not go into that detail because I don't think it's relevant for you guys. But take one or take one project that you worked on in your final year and maybe your internship project, so 2 projects. You can create 6, 7 stories out of it. I'll give you an example. I got hired in one of the startups in Bangalore to fix their hiring problem. We were 15 engineers and we were trying to grow to a large number, and we grew to like 55 engineers at the year end. If I take this project, I can actually create like 10 different start stories, and I have actually created. That's how I have prepared for my behavioral interview. So the first start story was when we had to fix a remote assignment. So the challenge was that we were sending assignments and we were not getting enough revert back. So the situation I just explained, then what action I did, and then what the result I came. Then there were other challenges also. We were giving offers to people, they were not turning up after taking offers. They were just going shopping and joining some other companies. So how do I solve that? So this one single large project, which went on for at least 1 year, can give me 10 different star stories. Now these star stories will be technical and non-technical in nature. Prepare both. Like technical will be you get stuck. Non-technical will be, well, one of your co-colleague was not helping you out or whatever, like you were doing all the hard work, he was just chilling, right? This is also a start story, right? So create those technical, non-technical both. With 6 or 7 star stories, you will be able to pretty much answer all kinds of behavioral questions. You will be able to, like, that version will fit in. Sounds non-intuitive at this moment, but once you start doing it, you would know. Like, look at those top behavioral questions, look at those 6, 7 star stories, do a mock interview with any of your friends before the actual interview, ask them to ask that question and you give them the answer, record yourself, listen yourself later. Okay, interview preparation is a hard job, okay, but it actually gets you money at the end, so it's worth it. So do spend time. Don't jump to answers quickly. I think I explained that. Revise your project and industry work, because there could be a chance that the hiring manager or whoever is interviewing you for the behavioral round ends up knowing about the area that you have worked on, and then he will basically cross question you around that. If they ask you to explain your project or the whatever the industry work that you did, be realistic. Pre-prepare that like make sure that you have revised it back. Be realistic. Don't glamorize results. Like, tell what exactly happened. It's perfectly okay to give a failed project as an example. You don't have to, turn around the table. You don't have to be Superman in all the projects that you work. More than half or more than 70% of the projects actually fail, right? So it's okay to be a part of a failing project. In fact, it comes across as better that, well, you understand what the project required, you failed, and you acknowledge. Like, that's a sign of humility, right? So yeah, so just be realistic, just give hard facts, tell numbers if you can. As I told you, like when you prepared for your CV, when you write about your project, you gave numbers, tell those numbers, and create a reflection story around it. Like, uh, if you not being even asked, like, tell me how you do it again, how would you do it better? If you have to do it again, how would you do it better? Even if somebody asks you to explain your project, at the end, if you can tell them that, I think if I have to do this again, maybe this is the part that I would probably do differently, that's a very great effect to it, right? That's like the icing on the cake. Like, so, like, you are coming across as very mature person now in this kind of a conversation, right? So do that. Uh, yeah, so I think we are okay. Yeah, we are well within time. Uh, I think, yeah, that's pretty much about preparing for these interviews. There's a system design thing. If like if you're doing like MBA grads, or here people who are doing PhD, if you have come from some industry experience, if you have written some code on production that got deployed, there may be a system design interview where there are 2 kinds of system design. There is low level and there's high level. The high level system design interview happens for more experienced people. I don't think it will happen for you. There's a low level system design interview that can potentially happen. Some companies I know tend to focus more on your system design skill than your algorithmic DS skill. I think Gojek is one of them, I remember. And in that case, you were given a very vague problem. There is, for example, you can Google, there is a parking lot problem by Gojek. They give it as their remote assignment. And you're supposed to model a few things. When I say model, it's not the machine learning model, like modeling as in creating class. And then you have to create the relationships, and then you have to write some code to kind of give some output. There's nothing very algorithmically challenging about it, but then the way you create your classes and make your relationships, they are important. One of the previous company where I solved a hiring problem for that startup, we used to send out a remote assignment which was very low level design heavy, and then based on the solution of the people, we used to got to know that, like, if the person has actually understood the problem and has he designed it in a way which is the most conducive. And it was a fairly straightforward thing, but then uh, not a lot of people were able to. I'll probably not get into that question detail because then it will just stretch the problem. But then, yeah, I would recommend you look up the parking lot problem by Gojek to understand what a low level design problem is. And then you should attempt 2 or 3 such questions, 2 or 3 overall. You don't have to kind of redoing it. You don't have to become better at it. The moment you will attempt the question and you will write some code, and then you look at the solution, and then once you get that mental map of, okay, this is how the system design problem is and this is how you're supposed to write the code, you will just get it. All you need to do is that in the actual interview, you will get a blackout in a system design interview when the problem is being given to you and you don't know where to start. You just have to cross that charge of not getting into that blackout zone and kind of start getting started on something, and then you will be all good. And that is the whole purpose of preparing for this low level system design. Uh, what interviewer is looking out for, which is this: can you take an abstract idea and think of various entities and write some code logic? And yeah, this is something you'll only get with practice. This is not something you'll become better at it like by doing more algorithm and data structure problems. So yes, that is all. I hope I did not rush. I hope you enjoyed, and I also hope that your 1 hour is not wasted and there is a takeaway from here on this talk. You to crack the interview. I see some foreseeable future. So if you need any help, if you need any guidance or anything, feel free to approach me. I sit in the CNI lab, and yeah, you can also reach out to me on my email, which I think will go out. And yeah, that is all. So yeah, any questions or anything if you guys have?
Let's all thank Ashish. Thank you, Ashish. It was a really interesting and an engaging talk. So we are open for questions. Please feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Sir, in case of experienced person who is applying for some coding interviews, like I'm experienced of 8 years, but I have not done much of a coding. I'm kind of a system designer. So in that case, what would you suggest to me?
Uh, Actually, it kind of depends on the company, but most companies have, if you're applying for a software engineer role, I think most companies have this Algo DS as the prerequisite. So yeah, I mean, it's a sad thing, but then yeah, you probably have to prepare. There are some companies that don't do Algo DS interviews or don't index too much, but then they are far and the few. So it also depends on which company you are applying. But I would recommend that if software engineering is the path that you need to progress, unless you have plans to become a researcher or go into academia or probably do your own entrepreneurship, because for a very long time, I also hated doing Algo DS thinking that I'll just be an entrepreneur. But well, at some point of time, I have to give in. And maybe for foreseeable future, yeah, that's Algo DS is probably the only sure shot and quick way for the companies to figure out your problem solving skill. But the challenge is that it is being so heavily abused that the bars have become very high.
Hi, nice talk. So I had one question. So in case of you have any recommendation for MLDL kind of interviews, where the software engineering requires those kind of skills?
You say ML interview?
Yeah, machine learning or deep learning
Okay,
interviews
okay.
with some specific domain, for example, NLP or computer vision, etc. So
Right.
any specific recommendation you have?
Okay. So again, I'll tell you from the experience of what I have. So when I joined Facebook, I have another friend who joined as an ML engineer, and he joined as an L4, and L4 is the entry level Facebook level. And his interview looked pretty much like the software engineering interview at Facebook. He has to do Algo DS, he has to do system design, he also has to do an ML design round. But yeah, more or less the interview pattern look exactly the same. If you are approaching companies that are probably startupish in nature, which are like ML heavy, they might probably not index as much on, let's say, Algo DS or system design. They probably want to look into your domain knowledge of how you do, but then they also will be interested in your problem solving skill, because uh, given a domain that you're not at all accustomed with, how do you employ your first principles to solve the problem? That is a skill that is irrespective of domain that you work in, and that is a skill you will employ a lot during the job. And that is one of the ways they test that skill is by doing an Algo DS problem. So yeah, in a nutshell, company specific, but if you're looking at those FANG companies and the standardized process, the ML and the deep learning interview process for being a software engineer, for being an ML engineer, for being a data engineer, they all looks the same.
Okay, and one more question. So when you apply off campus or even off campus, on campus, you generally tend to apply for multiple roles for the same company, which requires some different skill sets, all of which you might have.
Hmm.
But at the time of interview, so that's actually happened with me on one of the interviews. So I was expecting it to be an interview for a certain one of the roles, right, for which the pre-placement talk was being given. But actually, the hiring manager was for another role.
Mhm.
And exactly the same thing happened, which you mentioned, one of the behavioral questions that probably he was expecting. So in like he asked one question that what do you feel the team will bring to you?
Hmm.
And I answered in because I was more interested in one of the other roles than the like I had applied to both. So I had showed my inclination towards another role. So I finally got like rejected the final round. So how do you get to know like how to deal with such situations if you have any recommendation?
Uh, yeah. So, what company was this, by the way?
Mercedes.
Oh, okay, okay. So yeah, a lot of companies, maybe I probably wouldn't be able to speak for Mercedes, but a lot of FANG companies or these hardcore software engineering companies that I have worked at, they try to create their interview process very kind of uh, disjoint or mutually exclusive way from the actual job. They basically try to just gauge your these problem solving skills and these working in unknowns and stuff like that, and your like regular things, and then they wouldn't do anything specific to the job in their interviews. The hiring manager sometimes is interested to know that will you be happy working on this role or not. Uh, the best way to answer these behavioral questions where you don't know what is expected out of it is to actually go ahead and ask for it. So I was recently coaching someone. He was at Google and he got into Meta, and he had this behavioral round. And then I had told him that, so I have done interview as a Meta interviewer. Sorry, I'm digressing, but I'll come back to your point. I am interviewed as a Meta interviewer, and I know which are the skills Meta wants me to judge people on during behavioral rounds. And I had told this to them. So when he was getting asked a question, he actually went back and said that, oh, are you looking data point for this area? And the person was like, yeah, actually I am. So, so the right way to crack these behavioral questions is to kind of gauge what the person is actually looking out for, and then kind of tailor your answer to that. It's hacky in nature. It's not your true self that will come out of it. But then if you really need to know that what is it that they are looking out for example, with this kind of a question, that what is it that the team brings for you, my guess is that the interviewer is, or the hiring manager is trying to think that will the work is actually interest of you, will you stick in this company or not. A cross question would have been that, sir, is this interview for this role, or can you tell me more about what your team does? Okay, and with that answer, you will probably get more data as to what role he's looking for you, or ask him like, can you tell me how my day-to-day job would look like?
No, the problem was that the interviewer was being like it was a common interview for multiple roles.
Okay.
So like how do you gauge that what are your potential, what are they looking you a potential candidate for which
Maybe it could be a genuine question where they probably wanted to just figure out your fitment for the team. So maybe you didn't get rejected based on that particular answer is what I think. So based on your answer, like you could a friend say that, hey, this team is of most of my interest. If you think that you are kind of, you know, hitting yourself on your foot or something of that sort, end the answer with, okay, what do you think about this? And then hear back what he says and just look at his expressions on the face as to how he says that. Most of the times, these behavioral interviews or the system design interviews is also about gauging the interviewer experience and see if they are happy with your answers. If they, so most of these things are like the interviewer kind of make up their mind in the very first couple of minutes, and the rest of the interview is they are just trying to get more data points either to accept you or to reject you. FANG companies have explicitly worked on removing that bias, so they try to be like as objective as possible, and that's why the things have become so standardized. But a lot of other companies, they still don't have that standardization. So the best idea is to, like, if you're not very certain about what the person is looking, like, ask them cross questions. If you give them the answer, just ask them, you know, what they think about the answer, and based on what they're saying, try to do some damage control. That's probably what I would
thank
say.
you.
For the startup, we are applying for, if we are applying for startups, but in that case, like we don't get the major questions for the startups. Like for FANG companies, I know we can search on Google, Glassdoor, and many other platforms. But for the startups, if we are applying, let's say I'm not a fresh grad, but I'm a 2-year experience and I'm going in a friend's company, or a friend is referring me to the startup, then how would I prepare for it?
Your best source of information is the recruiter that who has reached out to you. They would have reached out to a lot of other people also, and a recruiter actually is, most companies hired through a third party recruiter. Their internal recruiting bandwidth is not good enough for them to source different candidates. So they work with these third party recruiters who eventually would have reached out to you. And they actually spend a lot of time talking with the in-house recruiter to understand what requirement and what skill that they are looking out for. They also have, to certain extent, visibility on how the interview process is going to look like. So talk to the recruiter. The recruiter is always on your side because the recruiter gets paid when you get hired. So recruiter will do everything in your favor.
I want to add one thing. There is an example. There is a company. He's my, let's say, he's my college senior. He is an own startup, and I think it's a, like 8 month startup only. So he asked me, "What about you?" And I said, "No, I'm okay with it." Then he asked me whether if you can refer to someone, and if I'm referring to someone, this that third person, he's asking me what kind of question should I prepare. In that case, should I ask the person directly, or
Yes,
like?
yes. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you if you have not joined, you have some idea of what skill that
Yeah,
they
I
have
know,
been
I
looking
know.
out
I
for.
have a complete idea of the company plus the person who is interviewing. I have the
Right.
complete idea, but the
Do
roles,
you know about their interview process?
no, I don't know about it.
Okay, so
So that
you
is,
basically got in just from reference. You didn't
yeah, that's
do
my
the
point.
interview.
Because for the FANG companies, as you said, we have a lot of platform. We will know the answers. We will know the questions also, and a lot of people are there who will actually guide me if I'm applying for a FANG company. But for the startups, it's very challenging.
Yeah, you see, this seems like a very specific case. My best advice would be, yeah, like, see, at the end of the day, with each interview, if you're referring someone, you obviously have good reputation
True,
about him,
true.
right? And you also want to make sure that the time utilization, unnecessary time utilization doesn't happen because your startup friend is also probably interviewing people. So it's good idea to kind of get an understanding of what skill they are looking out for, how the interview process. Basically, you have to now act as a recruiter. And then, like, well, it again depends how much time you can spare for this,
Okay.
but yeah, like, yeah, you should probably do that. How many people we still have online, or everybody has gone? Oh, okay, just one left. Okay, that was engaging then, because those people don't have any obligation to stay.
Thanks a lot once again, Ashish, for a very creative presentation. So I think somebody got questions. So we got you covered. So we have arranged snacks at the coffee hut. Please feel free to continue your conversation at the coffee hut. Thank you all and have a great evening.
you guys.